Hi, I'm Lucy and I'm here with another author spotlight. This is the program on AADL TV where I like to take a little time to tell you about some of the works of one specific author. The author that I would like to talk about today is named Talia Hibbert, and Talia writes romance novels. One of the reasons that I wanted to highlight her books is that I would like to, in this program, explore multiple genres. And there's really a lot of good romance writing out there, and there's a lot of different types of romance. It really covers a wide gamut of types of books. And I picked Talia Hibbert's books specifically because of who it is in these books who is experiencing this romance. Talia Hibbert has written many romances. Her first was published when she was 23. But the three that I would like to focus on are a trilogy of sorts about the Brown sisters. The first one is called Get a Life, Chloe Brown. The second one is called Take a Hint, DANI Brown. And the third one is called Act Your Age, Eve Brown. So the first book, Get a Life, Chloe Brown, starts with the oldest Brown sister, Chloe. In all three of these books, there are characters with disabilities, both seen and unseen. There are men and women of color. There are interracial couples. These books are very sex positive. They show that anyone can seek relationships for love and pleasure and enjoy it. They are also, I would say, the definition of romantic comedy. They all three center on these cute couples. They have sweet moments. They certainly have steamy intimacy. There's some reader discretion advised there. Hibbert does not hold back in any of these books on the mutual exploration of bodies, but as I said before, it's presented in a very sex positive way. It's always expressed explicitly, but it also is expressed in a healthy way with safe and loving portrayals. The other thing about all three Brown sisters books is that they are deep character studies. We are presented with very real, very flawed people. And though there are three books about the oldest, middle, and youngest Brown sister, you don't have to read them in order. They can be read out of order. They're just sort of taken as a set of three. The books don't follow the typical romance pattern of love happily ever after, but they show you a relationship in the end that is full of support and respect. And I'm going to get a little bit into the characters in each book to show you how that plays out. So the first book is about Chloe Brown. Chloe is a Black woman with fibromyalgia, and this fibromyalgia impacts her life greatly. It also changed for her how she lives her life. So in order to maintain control of her life, she has a very tight regimen, and she has completely quit her social life. She doesn't want to be out in the world in any situation where she could be feeling pain unexpectedly. And so she has just sort of turned internally into herself. She works from home and she follows a schedule. One day she almost gets hit by a car, and this makes her realize, like, if she got hit by a car, what would her eulogy be like? And she feels like right now it would say nothing. So she decides to create a list, a life list. And her list, in all regards, is pretty tame. She wants to move out of her parents' house. She still lives with her parents and one of her sisters. She wants to ride a motorbike. She wants to do something bad. And she wants to have a one-night stand. Those are some of the things on her list. She runs into this guy, Red, who happens to be the superintendent in the building that she moves into. Red and Chloe do not get along. Red thinks that Chloe is very stuck up and snobby, and Chloe just feels that Red is rude to her and she doesn't really have time for him. Red is very tall, strapping, with this red hair, which fits his name, though he's called Red for Redford, not because of his hair. And he ends up in a situation where he has to help Chloe back to the building, and they get to know each other, but this is very much a book of enemies becoming friends. And Red does help her cross some things off her list in some ways unknowingly, and in some ways he helps her intentionally. And as he's helping her with some of these things, their relationship starts to change and develop, becomes a friendship, and then it becomes something more, but there's things that are holding both of them back. For Chloe, it is most certainly her fibromyalgia and the chronic pain that she feels. And for Red, we learn that he was in an abusive relationship and he is really experiencing a lot of PTSD from that. He's got emotional trauma that he's got to work through, and this is not something that is often seen in romances for the male characters. And these characters, though they don't feel they're perfect, are really working to support each other in their imperfect spaces. Ultimately, they realize that they don't have to fix each other to have an emotional and physical attraction. And that is one of the really important parts of these books, and that what Talia Hibbert really wanted to set out when she was writing these books is to show that people with disabilities of all types can be loved and desired, and that can happen in the space that they're in. They don't have to be fixed or cured to have a healthy relationship. We do meet the younger sisters, DANI and Eve, in this first book with Chloe. They're very much a part of Chloe's life, and they are funny, and you get to know a little bit about their personalities, which you then see in the later books. The second book, Take a Hint, DANI Brown, is about the middle sister, Danica. Danica is a confident feminist. She's a professor. She's very driven. She is sex positive. She enjoys her body. She has friends with the doorman in the building where she works. His name is Zafir. There's a situation in the building where everyone has to evacuate and DANI is stuck in the elevator. And Zafir remembers this and he runs in and rescues her. And this gets caught on film, as everything does today. And there is this hashtag created around the situation, hashtag Dr. Rugby. This comes about because Zafir is an ex-rugby player, though he doesn't like people to know this. This is not like the first book where it's enemies becoming friends. Zafir and DANI have already been friends. DANI brings him coffee every morning. They talk, so they know each other pretty well. Zafir runs a nonprofit where he teaches rugby to underserved children, and this nonprofit starts to get attention and donations once this hashtag comes out. And so Zafir gets this idea of, what if people actually thought we were the couple that we portrayed? We could keep up with this celebrity and I would keep getting attention. And so DANI agrees to this with some stipulations, and they come up with some rules, and they have this fake dating scenario. They really become well known. They're getting interviewed together. As you would suppose, things start to change. They're pretending to be dating, so then they wonder what else they could pretend, and then maybe that becomes not pretend. And they, like Red and Chloe in the first book, have their own personal things that are holding them back. Danica has always been confident in supporting herself and in being herself and in having these one-night stands. She does not want to get into a loving situation. She has been in relationships with both men and women, and there was one relationship that really hurt her, and she sort of carried that through all of her relationships. Zaf, we learn, suffers from general anxiety disorder, and a lot of this started when his father and brother were killed in a car accident, and you learn that pretty close to the beginning of the book, but you get to see as the book progresses how big of a part of Zaf's life this anxiety is. So Zach has learned how to manage his anxiety, and he's learned how to help other people with anxiety, but then a situation like the situation with DANI starts to bring some stuff up again. And then you have DANI not wanting to get close to anybody. So though they are friends, they are really in a potential to ruin their friendship if they can't figure out how, once they've decided to take things to the next level, how to maintain that. Like the first book, there is a lot of romance, both physical and emotional. These books are funny. The characters are great. They are so well portrayed, flaws and all. So they're just fun to read. The third book is about the youngest sister, Eve Brown. And we have met Eve in both of the other books. What we know of Eve is that she's kind of spacey. She does not always landing on one thing. She uses the wrong words in the wrong places, but she's convinced they're the right words. In the beginning of the third book, Actor Age Eve Brown, Eve is described as a hot mess. She still lives with her parents. The parents of the brown girls are very affluent. The brown girls do not want for money. That's something that allows Chloe to just move out on her own. It has really allowed Eve to never have to get one single job, to sort of try these things like a catering business or an event planner and be okay if they failed. But at the beginning of this book, her parents are really at a point where they're kind of like, we're going to push you out of the nest and we're not going to support you financially for a year. You have to show us that you can hold down a job for a year. And then we can talk again about the trust fund. So Eve is 26 years old and she doesn't know how to earn a living and her parents have cut her off. So with this in mind, Eve just sort of leaves and is driving in her car. She drives past this B&B that says chef wanted. So she thinks, I love to cook. I'm going to go see what this is about. She goes inside the B&B. She meets the owner of the B&B, who is Jacob. Jacob is very uptight right away, very specific about how his inn is run, about what he wants. And he's really having trouble even trying to hire somebody because of how rigid he is about the way things need to be done and how much micromanaging he wants to do. So he tells Chloe, no, sorry, you don't have a job. You don't have a resume. We don't know anything about you. You've never had a real job. You don't have references. Chloe leaves and Jacob's friend says, well, wait a minute. You don't have a chef. You have this town event that you want to participate in coming up that relies on you serving really good food. What are you going to do? Jacob and his friend run after Eve to track her down, and Eve backs her car and hits Jacob. So that's the beginning of how they meet. That's their meet cute. She hits him with a car and breaks his arm. And he is not very happy about this. So their relationship starts off in not a very nice place. There's a lot of hatred on Jacob's part for how he has lost the use of his arm, what he can't do because of that, and also that he now is forced to hire this chef because he really needs help. Jacob lets Eve know that he is autistic, and that's part of the reason why he follows the structure that he does and why his routine is important to him. Eve starts to learn throughout the book more about autism and how it presents in women, and she starts to learn some things about herself as well. And Eve and Jacob become friends. They really talk about their friendship, and their friendship progresses in sort of waves of up and down. So you have the drama of will they, won't they, will they, won't they, and how's that going to work out? And it's a joy to read this book because their friendship is so nice and their interactions are great. Eve is really funny, and I think she's probably the funniest to me of the Brown sisters, like her sense of humor and just what she says. It really had me laughing. Her relationship with Jacob is interesting because it takes him a little bit longer to warm up to that kind of thing. But when he is really being himself, you see his warm and funny side as well. Like all the other characters in Hibbert's book, Eve and Jacob are incredibly human. All three of these books have relationships that are examples of unconditional love. People coming into love without having to fix something about the other person, but loving that person as they are, flaws and all. And so you see these characters loving all parts of each other, and things that other people would think are faults don't seem like faults to them. They just seem like part of the makeup of the person that they are in love with. It was important for Hibbert to put this unconditional love in her books because she wanted to create characters with anxiety, with chronic pain, with neurodiversity that were loved and sort of defeat stereotypes that are typically in books where you wouldn't have a character like that being able to enter into a relationship without having something cured or fixed. It's important for Hibbert to put this in her book because she does suffer from chronic pain. She's also autistic, and she wanted to show how wonderful it could be when two autistic characters came together and fell in love. And, whether it's through romance or friendship or family, she wanted to show how neurodivergent people can build their own communities and their own relationships. Because Eve and Jacob are both autistic, but are both so different, we also learn from this book about the variance in autism and neurodiversity. Jacob was diagnosed at a young age, and so he already knows this about himself when we meet him, but we get to see a little bit of Eve's discovery when she matches the criteria of the description of a woman with autism. In an interview, Hibbert was saying that she wanted to have a character who was Black and autistic and female, who didn't present in the typical way, because the research and diagnoses around autism often don't focus on any of those groups, and certainly not on the intersection of those groups. In this interview, Hibbert also said that she sees writing romance as an act of resistance. And one of the ways that that comes about is because she feels that her romances have to have a happy ending. And in this happy ending, she is giving power to her characters who experience that happiness. And that is her resistance, because all of these characters have things that other people might think would hold them back or keep them down, and yet they get to experience happiness with one another. I really enjoyed reading all three of these books. It really underscored to me the importance too of reading in different genres. They were very romantic, they were funny. I just enjoyed them through and through, and was so happy that I got to know these three Brown sisters. So those are just some of the books, really the trilogy about the Brown sisters by Talia Hibbert. And I hope that whether or not you read romance, you might give one of these books a try.